Senator Eckhardt.
Just two questions. Thank you so much, Senator Parker, for bringing this. I see great merit in the bill.
Thank you, Senator.
I just have some questions. So is it your intention, of course, our state border security operations thus far have been temporary in acknowledgement that this is a federal obligation, not a state obligation. Is it your intention that with this bill, our border security operations would become a permanent fixture within the DPS command structure?
Senator, thank you for the question. And look, this really ultimately gets back to the idea, the concept around what is a federal responsibility, what is a state responsibility, and so forth. We have had to do a whole lot, as you know, firsthand, all of our colleagues in this room know, over the years to address our border. I don't want to get into the politics of it. We just have had very serious issues that we've had to address. We've had to invest in that border. While it is a federal government responsibility primarily, the federal government cannot do it alone. And the state of Texas must protect itself and its citizens. We're blessed economically. We have the ability to do these things. And we're doing this in a very, I think, efficient and responsible way for the taxpayer while protecting for our people. And so there's nothing more important than the security and safety of all 31 million Texans. So the answer would be yes, that this would be, the border security function would be a permanent piece of this division within DPS. So you'd have, Senator, the border security piece, you'd have the preparedness piece, and you'd have the critical infrastructure protection piece as being really the three key building blocks, if you will, of the organization.
So
and certainly the Colonel can speak to this in much more detail.
And thank you so much for that. I am absolutely committed, as a former prosecutor myself, and having worked in adjacent positions with law enforcement for most of my career, I completely concur that crime on our soil, no matter where the victim or the perpetrator was born, is our responsibility to address. And it's becoming more complex because of our border issues.
100%. The complexity cannot be understated. The fact that it's an evolving...
Let me finish the...
Yes,
let me get
please,
to the question.
Please.
So that complexity requires a much higher degree of coordination and very clear lines of who's in charge here, because you don't want... the worst thing in an investigation is to have people stepping on each other.
Exactly.
But let me ask you this. The fiscal note for this bill is $7.1 million. Is that in addition to the $6.5 billion that we've allocated to border security? So is that on top of the $6.5 billion?
So the number that I have actually, Senator's a little... Yeah. So let me just say this. We got some different figures coming into this in terms of what it looks like. What we're doing in terms of resources, we are specifically with regard to this bill. So I'm just going to speak to this bill. The number, that $6 million figure, is what we're talking about here for roughly an additional 30 FTE. That's really what we're doing. It's about 30 FTE. The rest of the FTEs that will be a part of this division are all coming from existing other roles. Again, to the comment around greater efficiency, breaking the silos, and being better coordinated. So I can only speak to the fact that, we can talk about the broader appropriation, all that we're doing. We're just talking about specifically this $6 million figure for the additional FTE, roughly, I think 23 people to be precise. So to kind of give you some sense of what the dollars look like in greater detail.
As we've discussed before on the floor, I'm seeing increasing add-on costs that the state is taking on, sometimes at the state level, in this instance, and sometimes at the local level on local property tax. I would like for us to continue working to see how much of these additional costs that seem to be ongoing can fit underneath that $6.5 billion umbrella so that we don't enable the federal obligation to continue to be foisted onto the state. And so I'd love to work with you to ratchet down the enabling of the feds while also appropriately funding the fine work of multi-agency coordination on enforcing crimes committed on Texas soil, irrespective of where the victim or the perpetrator was born.
Yeah,
Thank you.
look, Senator, I always want to be responsible for the taxpayer, but as we all know in this room, there's nothing more important than security and safety of all the Texans constituents that we're so blessed to represent. And so happy to work with you on that regard. I think this is an incredibly efficient and inexpensive investment that will yield enormous benefit for the citizens of the state. And so when you look at where you want to spend money, where those dollars should go, what is a core function of government, the security and protection of our people, to me, is at the top of the list. And so for those reasons, I feel like this is very prudent, very intelligent. We're just, again, primarily deploying those additional resources. But like you, I want to see the federal government do everything, pick up the majority of the cost associated with the border. We all want that. But until that day comes and until we have consistency there over long periods of time with regard to planning and security and so forth, then I think, again, we're doing the right things to protect the state of Texas.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for the question, Senator.
Senator Flores, you're recognized, and then I'll come to Senator Hinojosa. No, it's not. It's Senator Parker. Senator Flores, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning. So I just had a few questions on this. So Homeland Security, in my experience in working with the state, is, of course, for the purposes of this committee, we're talking about border security, but the function of Homeland Security, as it evolved out of 9/11, had to do with the totality of protecting our infrastructure, maritime resources, grid, everything that had to do with protecting the homeland. Is that kind of what border security, of course, is a very important function of ours and something that we fully support. But in your mind, does this division, as you're proposing to us, encompass the total scope of what the definition of Homeland Security, as it's been applied since 9/11, entails?
Senator, great question. And I would say yes. I would say, the border security functions what Texas has been doing so well, so efficiently, with the incredible men and women in this room and their leadership. But we got to also invest in this preparedness piece, which is enormous. Large-scale training, large-scale preparation, all those kinds of things for God forbid, horrific scenarios that would impact our homeland here in Texas. And then, yes, we have to invest in protecting that critical infrastructure. And so I can take you through, the Colonel can take you through it, the FTE allocation in each of those three major buckets, if you will, here of this new division. But absolutely, it's in alignment with a comprehensive view of how we protect the homeland, so to speak, here in Texas.
Thank you. And secondly, so what you're seeking to do here is to codify what I think the Colonel can already do administratively. He can create or uncreate divisions in the agency at will, with the permission of his commission. But what this does is codify that this division in his agency. Is that so? Is that too?
Yeah, I mean,
no matter what the administration is, that that division would exist. Is that why you're doing this?
Well, yes, I think it's very important that we have this structure permanently going forward, and that's what's been such an enjoyable and frankly incredible process for me and my team has been working with DPS so closely in crafting this. Yes, could they do some of these things on their own unilaterally? Sure. But having the legislature be a part of this process, having the governor, lieutenant governor, all the different leadership, folks obviously in both chambers to be signing off in support of this, I think that only comes from having great discourse and conversation in the legislative process. And so, yes, that's what we're trying to do, is to really formalize some of these capabilities for the future in a way that is most efficient and effective for the state.
Thank you. I think something similar to this action was taken by the legislature previously in regard to DPS when it was concerning the Rangers. and when the Rangers were removed, and then the legislature put them back in, and made so as a point that was an important function that the legislature felt that needed to be codified. If I remember my history correctly, and of course we have Rangers here, but so it's kind of similar to that. I would just
No, it's great. It's a great point, Senator.
just to make sure we understood why you were doing that, and
Yes.
as opposed to just letting the agency create it administratively and using existing resources within their different disciplines to be able to create this function.
Yes.
But good.
And let me say this: but the vast majority of the individuals that will be involved in this division are existing resources within DPS. It's a very modest new additional number of folks that will be joining, so to speak.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hinojosa of Hidalgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be just to the point. I don't want a long answer.
Yes, sir.
But I'm not objecting to the cost, but I do want to point out that there'll be a $7 million plus negative impact, and that's fine. I mean, this type of operation costs money, but I just want to clarify that. Being on finance, I know I see the budgets, so that is. But just to correct to make sure we're right on that, the cost, and there'll be 23 full-time FTEs.
Right, 23.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify that. I'm not asking for an answer because you'll give me a long answer. I just do want to point that out so that we make sure we know what we're looking at.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's 23 additional FTEs. All the others are existing resources.
Got it.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Hinojosa of Nueces.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Parker, for this bill.
Thank you.
I think it's very, very smart. I think it's much needed. And Senator Eckhardt, I really appreciate your comments too, because we have to also always be fiscally responsible and at the same time not express to the federal government that we're taking over their duty. However, I think we can all look to recent times when our federal partners are as good as a commander-in-chief in enforcing those efforts at the border, and we here at the state realize that we have to take a role in order to protect our citizens. So that is something that I think is absolutely needed. I appreciate the work put into this. I think also just looking through this, you are, and you said it in your layout, you are actually also helping consolidate effort in trying to find that fiscal responsibility within what we're doing here at the state. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Senator. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're pulling in a lot of these aspects, including some, and this may be a question for Colonel Martin later, but including